So I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse.
Why you bought Twitter? Why didn't you create your own platform? Maybe it was cheaper for you?
I mean, I thought about creating something from scratch, but I thought Twitter would perhaps accelerate progress versus creating something from scratch by 3 to 5 years. I think we are seeing just a tremendous technology acceleration that 3 to 5 years is actually worth a lot. I mean, in fact, I was a little worried about the direction that and the effect of social media on the world, and especially Twitter. And I thought it was very important that it be a maximally trusted sort of digital public square, where people, within countries and internationally could communicate with the least amount of censorship allowed by law. Obviously, that varies a lot by jurisdiction, but I think in general, social media companies should adhere to the laws of countries and not try to put a thumb on the scale beyond the laws of the countries. I think this is something that is probably agreeable to, the legislators and to the people of most countries. So I think that's the general idea, is just to reflect the values of the people, as opposed to imposing the values of essentially San Francisco and Berkeley, which are somewhat of a niche ideology as compared to the rest of the world. But Twitter was, I think, doing a little too much to impose a niche San Francisco Berkeley ideology in the world. I thought it would work better for the future of civilization to try to correct that thumb on the scale, if you will. I think we should be maybe a little bit concerned about actually becoming too much of a single world government. If I may say, that we want to avoid creating a civilizational risk by having, frankly, this may sound a little odd, too much cooperation between governments. If you look at, say, at history and the rise and fall of civilizations, that really all throughout history, civilizations have risen and fallen, but it hasn't meant the doom of humanity as a whole, because there've been all these separate civilizations that were separated by great distances. And so, say, like, while Rome was falling, Islam was rising, and so you had like the sort of caliphate doing incredibly well, while Rome was doing terribly, and that actually ended up being a source of preservation of knowledge and many scientific advancements. And so, I think we want to be a little bit cautious about being too much of a single civilization, because if we are too much of a single civilization, then if the whole thing may collapse. I'm obviously not suggesting war or anything like that, but I think we want to be a little bit wary of actually cooperating too much. It sounds a little odd, but we want to have some amount of civilizational diversity, such that if something does go wrong with some part of civilization, that the whole thing doesn't collapse, and humanity keeps moving forward.
Elaborate a bit and brief us. How do you see technology in the next 10 years from now?
Let's see, 10 years, it's always difficult to predict technology with precision, especially over a 10-year time frame when it is changing so much. I mean, there's obviously the transition to sustainable energy with solar, wind, batteries, and electric vehicles. And that is, if you look at the percentage growth of that is a very high percentage growth. Although because of the massive industrial base of the current sort of fossil fuel economy, even if for example, if electric cars were 100% of production immediately, it would take 20 years to replace the fleet. So this is still something that is quite gradual. It's measured in at least a few, 30, 40 years type of time frame. On a more sort of near-term time frame, I think artificial intelligence is something we need to be quite concerned about and really be attentive to the safety of AI. If there's something bad, if something goes wrong, the reaction might be too slow from a regulatory standpoint. I'd say if I'd say one of the biggest risks to the future of civilization that it is AI, but AI is a double, it's both positive and negative. It has great promise, great capability, but it also, with that comes great danger. I mean, you look at, say, nuclear, discovery of sort of nuclear physics, you had nuclear power generation, but also nuclear bombs. So anyway, I think we should be quite concerned about it, and we should have some regulation of what is fundamentally a risk to the public.
With AI, education might change dramatically. Can you tell us briefly about your philosophy of education? And number two, do we need 12 years of schooling and 4 years of university?
With respect to education, I think in general, some things that we could do to make it more compelling would be to explain to children why we are teaching a particular subject. The human mind has evolved to really forget anything that it deems unimportant. So in fact, human memory is really quite bad relative to, say, the memory of your phone. Your phone can remember the entire contents of an encyclopedia down to the last letter and pixel. But human memory is terrible by comparison. So the mind is constantly trying to forget things, actually. So if you explain the why a subject is being taught, that will then establish relevance, and it's much more likely to result in motivation for kids. And then also, if you teach knowledge, especially in the sciences, as solutions to a problem, it's much more effective. So, let's say you're trying to understand an internal combustion engine. Well, it's actually better to sort of take that apart and then say, well, what tools do we need to use to take it apart? We need a wrench and screwdriver and various other things to take it apart. Well, then you understand that the reason for the tools. And so, like for mathematics and are like tools in physics and engineering. But if you teach to the problem and then you understand, then you establish the relevance of the tools, then it's actually much easier to remember mathematics and physics because they help explain how the world works, as opposed to teaching them without explaining why, and simply teaching them. It's like, instead of teaching to the problem, currently people teach to the tool. It would be like having a course on screwdrivers or a course on wrenches, but not understanding why you have a course you're learning about screwdrivers and wrenches.